fell in love with it. It sounds cheesy, but it's the truth because I really appreciate the simplicity.
Okay, hi everyone. It's MJ from draw.io. Today we have a really exciting guest here. His name is Simon Baumann. He is the creative mind behind Forces of Nature, which is a series that has been filmed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Simon. But in epic locations like Germany, Italy, Hong Kong. Is there any more?
No, that's a very good short introduction. Hi, by the way. So I'm happy to be here and have this interview with you today. And yeah, I mean, it summarized the basics well, but of course, there's much more to tell. So what do you want to know?
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. We'll get into how you're in talks with Amazon Prime and Apple maybe. And we're really here to learn about it, but also about your awesome use case during production with Draw.io, which we found to be really, really cool and interesting. When we were chatting before this interview, you were telling me a little bit about how you thought it was a use case that maybe not a lot of people would think of. So that's exactly why we wanted you here today. And we'll just start off with the basics. So if you could give us a quick overview yourself, because I know I introduced you of Forces of Nature and maybe the key themes it explores or whatever you want to tell us about it.
Yeah, so I'm the creator of the TV action series Forces of Nature. It's upcoming, so it's not released yet. As you mentioned, we shot in the last 2.5 years, various locations in 3 different countries. Altogether, we filmed over 100 days now. And yeah, so I wrote the story. I basically had the idea, wrote it down, shot it together with my team. So speaking of directing, and if you wish, I could say, yes, I'm also the producer. So
Okay.
I put in that, the financial backing and what is needed to basically produce it. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And what inspired you to create this series? Like, what were the main objectives behind it? I would really like to know.
Yeah, it's a very interesting event that happened, as I mentioned, 2.5 years ago. It was at the end of COVID. And so my background is obviously filmmaking, but I also do some IT and game related stuff. And yeah, we had some time to think about what we really want to do, some project with, let's say, passion. And me and my cameraman back then, we met with 2 interesting guys that turned out to be the main characters now in the show. One is a hip hop dancer, a very talented one. His name is Hurricane. It's not his real name, but he really names himself Hurricane. And the other guy, his name is Red Thunder, and he's a extremely good martial artist. Speaking of a former kickboxing world champion. And they are friends, by the way. So we decided we want to shoot something cool with them. And from that point on, the whole story developed, which obviously now you and the audience can already understand, makes up the title, Hurricane, Red Thunder, like Forces of Nature. And yeah, so we integrated more and more people who wanted to join the project. And I became really busy writing more scenes and trying to keep overview with the overall storyline, which now basically is altogether 6 episodes in a very common TV format, so 40 plus minutes, and we will release our season very soon. So yeah, that's the very quick background story.
Well, that's very exciting. And I think that some context that we got to give our viewers here is that this series features a lot of non-actors with real talents, which is
True.
kind of what you were talking about. So how did that come about and how did it shape the storytelling for Forces of Nature?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point I like to talk about. It was not planned to shoot with non-professionals. I mean, I have shot in the past with professional actors mainly, but because the project was started in such a small scale and we didn't really plan to make something big, we just started with the people that were available. And then word by mouth, right? Like people were talking about it, and
Oh, so like word of mouth?
yeah, exactly. They, it's like
Okay.
one person staring in one of the scenes, and then of course they will tell their friends, or we had some Instagram
Yeah.
posting or whatsoever. And then of course these people reach out to you, these friends or yeah, people in their network and ask, "Hey, can I be part of it too?" And that was really cool. So I didn't have to really go through a tough casting period. It's basically most of the people come to me. Of course, sometimes I will find people like really cool characters on Instagram or other social media platforms. By the way, that's quite a handy tool to do
Yeah.
casting nowadays because people love to present themselves, and you have all the images like the photos on their site, and you can swipe through it. So yeah, I hope I didn't lose the point, but yeah, that's one of the reasons that it just naturally grow, and there were like all these normal people. And then on the other hand side, this is maybe a bit more holistic point of view that
Yeah.
I didn't had at the start, but it kind of developed over time. Is that me as a filmmaker? I find out actually non-professionals have a very pure way of being in front of the camera. So of course, some people are
Yeah.
maybe more nervous, obviously, like me right now. but
No.
but there are actually quite many people who have a very good charisma just by nature, and so I didn't find it very hard to shoot with non-professionals. And lastly, in the history of filmmaking, actually, there are numerous examples that directors, they first started shooting their movies with friends, or people that were available. I don't want to say that they are not professional actors. Sometimes, these directors had a network of professional actors or student, like acting students.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there are many examples, so nothing wrong about it. Actually, big chance to do it this way. No.
Well, it sounds really interesting, and I love to hear how like the name and everything has kind of come together so naturally because it does say forces of nature in the end.
Mm.
And I agree that a lot of people are just it's more authentic when they're themselves and like that comes off through the camera. So I'm really excited to see it. When will it be available?
Yeah, so we are right now hanging in with the post-production. So post-production is a very, very heavy and complicated process. But I'm confident enough to say that it will be released early next year. But of course, it
Okay.
depends on a couple of factors, and I want to make it as good as possible and not just release because we have to. Luckily, I'm the producer, so I,
You can choose.
the pressure is on me, but I have to basically decide it a little bit on my own. Plus, obviously, respecting all the people that are involved and the TV networks, speaking of streamers that are interested in it. And so, of course, all of this has to line up and certain professionalism is required here. But realistic goal is, early next year.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm really excited and we'll get right back into that topic towards the end. But it all sounds very exciting. I hope that it, comes out when it has to come out. And if not, wait for the perfect time. We'll all be very excited to watch it.
Thank you.
So I guess my first question to tie it into draw.io a little bit is how you and your team or just yourself utilize draw.io in the planning of forces of nature, or how we just want you to tell you a little bit about your use case because it's really interesting.
Yeah. Again, simple answer is I have some IT background. I have done mobile apps for startups in the past. I've worked with programmers. And so, in fact, the first time I get in touch with draw.io was when I was working on a concept for an app. And one of my programmers told me, hey, there's draw.io. Please use it. It's really good. So I looked into it, and there are many other tools nowadays, and yeah, I kind of fell in love with it. It sounds cheesy, but it's the truth, because I really appreciate the simplicity. Of course, I'm not saying that it's just a simple tool, and obviously certain people will use it to a higher extent or on a higher level, but somehow I always lack an intuitive tool that gives me a great overview of my story arcs, plot points, everything. And because my project is very multi-layered, I mean, obviously every series is very multi-layered, because you have more than just like a few characters. You have certain episodes. They're like parallel storytelling, so certain events that can jump and interconnect. So all of this kind of felt for me right to use draw.io, because I'm using draw.io almost like a mind map, or like a geographical overview for all of my story points. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get what you mean when you say it's simple, because it's very intuitive, and it's like it can be used on a very high level, which, if I'm honest myself, sometimes when I'm demoing it, I'm very confused about what the technical aspects of it are. I know how to show you, for example, a networking shape, but I don't know how to make a networking diagram, right?
Yeah.
But that's why we also call it the tool for every team, because we want absolutely everybody, no matter what their role is or what they're working on, to be able to use it. And I've told you a little bit about other interesting use cases, but yours definitely did stick out to me. And I feel like I would use it for something like that. I mean, personally, I've used it to like find the correct Halloween costume. So I feel like you can use it for just about anything, right?
Mm.
And that's really cool. So were there any stages where you thought like, thank goodness I have this tool that I can play around with and use so easily?
Yeah, many stages. And this is not just like making it up. I mean, anyway, it's obvious for the audience that it's very uncommon to use this tool for filmmaking. And so I kind of discovered it myself, for myself. It was helpful, obviously, in the pre-production phase, as I already mentioned, everything related to story development, keeping overview with the scenes, and so on. I'm not jumping into details here, because I think for
Yeah.
people who are in the film industry, they know what I'm talking about, and even people who are maybe
Hmm.
not, they will understand it. Then secondly, in the production, here it's cool that I can still keep that overview. I don't need to go through the whole script, like the script for our series, like 300 pages easily. And so you don't want to flip through all of that all the time. I mean, of course, when you shoot, then normally you only look at the pages that are the pages for the day. Yeah? And that is what you discuss with the actors. But for me, as a showrunner or creator of the series, I need to understand where is it placed and how does it interconnect. And then lastly, and this is probably another very exciting factor, is for post-production. So post-production is basically we are done with the filming, we have all our footages, and now we go into editing, right? So we have all the footage, the clips, and now you go into the editing software and cut it. And again, we have so many footages because we have many scenes, and sometimes we shoot with two camera, and we have certain variations, right? Like maybe this take is good, another take is different. But anyway, so for me, draw.io is something like a middleman here, because I can, without much stress and wasting time, I can move around scenes on the diagram page before I go into the editing software. And then I'm kind of stuck in that interface or in this environment. So it's a different way of thinking or organizing your ideas and thoughts. And that is really helpful. I love it to have an overview. It makes everything easier. Yeah.
Yeah, visualization is a real thing, huh?
Hmm.
Because when you can see things, we actually were talking about this in the team recently, how the brain processes images 60,000 times faster than like just text. So it just makes everything quicker and kind of just helps everybody out, and gets everybody kind of on the same page. So I totally see where you're coming from. I myself have worked in TV before, but that doesn't mean that I know much about the post or pre-production. Um, but very, very exciting. And I think it's time to go ahead and show everybody. And you can walk us through that diagram or one of the
Hmm.
diagrams you've created using draw.io. You can tell us what it represents and how does it fit into the broader scope of the series. You kind of already given us a background for it, but we would love to see it.
This is basically
Mhm.
my diagram for the first season. And it's really a work in progress file, which is, I think, quite
Okay.
cool to show it. I was first wondering if I really want to show it, but then I thought, yeah, I have nothing to hide. And anyway, we're going to be out soon. So let's just do it.
Well, no spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, we can just quickly jump. So as everyone
Yeah.
can see, it's very simple. So here, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, and then it's basically a string of bubbles or squares that are connected.
Shapes.
And
Mhm.
of course, this is now already a clean sheet, so that could look totally different. Speaking of that, maybe at some point, first I just have like a couple of scenes, right? And I will arrange them for a while, and then I find the right order, and then I connect them. So,
Oh, okay.
right,
Very cool.
it's very simple. I mean, it
Mhm.
would be the same way how you do it in an analog environment and just put some post-its on a wall and
Yeah.
rearrange them. And so basically, because film is a linear media, I have to go into this linear form sooner or later. Even I like to have an overview like a network, and it can be chaotic at the start with all the bubbles flying around. But then in the end, you really have to bring it in a order with a beginning and an end, because that's how storytelling works, right? So
Yeah.
in this case here, first episode, I have an intro, which here I name is Red Thunder's dream sequence. And then there's the narrator at the fireplace, and he starts talking. So it's kind of an introduction into the whole
Mm.
story world. And then we jump into the next scene, which is Hurricane with his family playing with the children in the garden. And so actually what I have to point out here, these bubbles, they don't necessarily represent one scene. This could be like 3 or 4 scenes, but I boil it down. I try to make it as precise and relevant for the story. So these
Okay.
are plot points for me, basically.
Okay.
Sometimes more, sometimes less. And yeah,
Yeah, and then
so
you elaborate on those while you're filming, I'm
exactly,
assuming. Yeah.
exactly. And then
Okay.
maybe what is interesting, so there are a few colors. And again, it's super simple what I'm doing. So I hope the audience doesn't get bored. But so
No.
I have a couple of flashbacks, or let's say more supernatural things happening. So it could be a dream, could be a deja vu, it could be a flashback, that we play with the time layer. And so, for example,
Okay.
here in this situation, so Hurricane, he drives home on his motorcycle, and then the voice of the narrator fades in, and we go into a flashback story, which is 1 year earlier. And the narrator basically tells us, okay, so Hurricane, he has a younger brother. His name is Musa. And then we see them together in a car. And this younger brother, he steps out from the car and walks towards an industrial building,
Okay. Wow.
where actually then in the next scene he will meet a drug dealer who's named Doc. And yeah, he basically just want to make a deal with him, which fails, blah blah blah. And then after
Yeah.
this flashback is finished, I go back into, you see, my main string, which is actually here where we ended. So Hurricane driving home, flashback, and then he arrives at home and he has an argument with his wife about money. So these things happen that, for example, there is a color coding, and I will then highlight it or basically try to visualize that, okay, now we are going back in time, or we're going forward in time, or something is like opening a door into a parallel universe. Could be a dream, could be whatever the people have on their mind.
Yeah, and I bet it's also really helpful to, let's say you get an idea during filming, you can just add it, kind of like you said with the post-its, like it's so easy to just add. And something I want to just point out here for those of you who are seeing this black screen and you are used to like seeing the white screen for Draw.io, he is using dark mode, and it's really cool that he is using dark mode, which that's not a bad thing, and actually that's why we have it. So a lot of people just prefer working on dark mode. But just in case people were a little lost, I just wanted to make that disclaimer. Were there any features during, the creation of this diagram, or after the fact, or now during, that surprised you? Like maybe something that you weren't expecting to be so helpful?
That is really difficult to answer because
Okay,
again,
we can skip that one.
Again, I think I'm using the tool on a almost like children level, so it's super easy and intuitive, and there's no magic about what I'm doing with it. Of course, I mean, sometimes you maybe wonder, should I try another bubble? But for me, for me, it's that's again, and I'm not making this up, but that's what I really like about the tool, that it can be very simple, and it's not trying to simulate or fake any beautiful user interface. It's I understand, I guess, why also programmers love to use this tool, because I mean, here it's not really about designing, right? If you want to design something nice, you could go into, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention other products here, but you can cut it out. I mean, one could use Figma, right? And Figma is very famous for being a pretty cool tool for like designed interfaces. But what I'm doing here is purely text-driven storytelling, and it has to be immediate. And I want to give you an example. I hope we have enough time for that. But so,
of course,
originally my background is arts, so drawing. Since I'm very small, I do drawing and painting, and I spend a lot of time with it. And so I think when you do drawing in a academic or traditional sense, then you learn that you work yourself from like the big canvas, from the overview, the holistic thing, towards details, right? And you don't start with some detail in the corner and spend like 3 hours with it before you have not a clear idea what is the drawing or the painting that you want to make. Exactly. So normally, and I find really great artists, they sketch very fast, so they do it very fast, very fluent. And so in that sense, the tool is driving your creativity and not stopping or slowing it down. And that is very important for me, because that makes it intuitive, and I think the idea in its core stays where it should be. And this is something I like about Draw.io, because it doesn't slow me down. The idea is here, bang, I put it on the board, connect it. If I don't like it, I rip off the connection, I move it around. So another cool example here is this orange thing, and it's something that happened recently. So episode 4 is actually the episode that we spent a lot of time in Italy. And so in fact, we shot all of these scenes for the Italy episode in 2 different years. So the first time we shot last year in 2023 in September, and then we went there this year in September. And so one of the main reason was because I wanted to make the whole Italy story one episode and not mix it with other stuff. So
Okay.
I had the problem that, sometimes even I don't write necessarily in the screenwriting software. I will just write into a notebook or some kind of paper that is flying around on my table, so on my desk. So I had to reorganize a little bit the story for the Italy episode, and so in fact I put it in here, and so all of the bubbles that are not orange or yellow is basically what we shot in the year previously, so in 2023.
Oh, very cool.
And then I realized, okay, so there are certain gaps. Yeah. So for example, this part here, that was basically a gap. Yeah. And I was wondering, okay, how to fill it. And I didn't have the same actors available and so on and so forth. I don't want to go into too much detail, but basically,
Yeah.
this was really, really nice for me to get all of the plot points and the scenes and the relationships right in a very fast way, because
Yeah.
I just put in these information and I have a great overview, and then later I can go into my screenwriting software and write all of these scenes in detail. Yeah.
Okay, so that actually brings me to my next question, and it's kind of about that. I don't know if there was a moment maybe that you can think of where using the diagram saved the day or kind of got you back on track or prevented something from going wrong, or is it just something that has kept you so in check and so organized that you haven't had to kind of pivot?
Okay. Honestly, the truth will, I will know the truth
Yeah.
when everything is finished. Yeah, like the whole editing
Okay.
is finished, because
Okay.
it's such a multi-layered process, and in many of these layers, or in many of these tasks, you will change something. So I think it's helping me a lot. If it really saves my problems, I don't know, but definitely
Yeah.
I can tell that from my current experience, it was really helpful for me to detect a couple of mistakes or logical
Okay.
problems. Yeah. So, for example, if you have a character that, it's a really stupid example, but let's say you have a character who dies in episode 2, but for some stupid
Yeah.
reason you don't remember in episode 4 that he is dead, then it would be really stupid.
Somebody mentioned something. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Kind of like the logistics of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of to keep track of. You're recording, you've got many characters, you've got non-actors, you've got a lot going on, and like just forgetting those things is very common. So yeah, I always think that just like being organized overall, is so helpful to be able to visualize it and see it. I think that it's so powerful. It's what we were just talking about, like just being able to see it and change it around as needed is, I think, super helpful for about any use case. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Did you share this diagram with your team, or was this something that you were just using personally for yourself?
Yeah, the diagram, I mainly use it for my own purpose, because of course, one has to say, normally if you create a series or a bigger movie project, it's not a one-man show, right? So even my project is not a one-man show, but a lot of the ideas and the creation of it is at the very early stage a one-man show, because I have an idea, I write it down, and so on and so forth. So I'm not working within a traditional environment, speaking of a writer's room, where you have a showrunner and some senior writers and assistant writers and so on and so forth, and they all have different type of skill and task. Of course, the showrunner would be the closest to my heart, because again, it's the person who had the initial idea and is kind of overlooking everything. But in my case, because I'm not Hollywood, and I don't have I don't have 20 assistants, and I had the stupid idea to make a series and not just a short movie. I have to deal with all of this, and so the communication is, in this sense, is basically between myself.
Me, myself, and I.
Exactly. But of course, then at a certain stage, all of this information has to be shared with my team, because I have camera team, I have actors, I have sound team, and so on and so forth. So it's also a quite big amount of people for a small production.
Yeah.
And so here, yes, it's helpful to share the information, but me personally, I'm more a fan of sharing the information as precise and or distinct as possible, because I don't want to overwhelm them with this chaos that you are looking at right now. And the cameraman doesn't necessarily need to know all of this. Of course, if they have a question, I will answer it, or if I feel it's important to explain more about the story. But mostly we work on a basis that is related to what we are going to shoot now.
Okay, so you would like just talk about like a certain little, like maybe just the orange ones, or that episode, or just that one. Okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
Because another factor is, the more information you have, the more communication you have to do, right? It's like in a company, the more information you share, the more people you have to employ to manage and share all of this information, which actually leads to all of these productivity tools nowadays. And I think, yes, if you are not like the big company or the big studio with hundreds of assistants who will basically deal with all of these smaller tasks, then I think it's more reasonable to keep information as precise as possible and not stress people with stuff that they really don't need to know. And if they have to know it, they will ask, because if they are smart, then anyway they're gonna ask. So
no, definitely.
But I wanna add maybe one thing. So let's say if I would work in a bigger production environment, speaking of my season 2, right?
Correct. I was going to say that. I was going to ask questions about season 2.
So then, of course, I would wish that with the right setup, speaking of money and investors and then of course there will be more people involved. And then in this situation, I would highly recommend that in a writer's room, you maybe use a tool like draw.io or whatever you like to work with.
Yeah.
Because here, again, it's very, very helpful. The only thing that I would wish then, but maybe you already added this function, I don't know, probably haven't discovered it, but then it would be interesting to have teams, so that not only one person can log into one of these diagrams, and that people could maybe add information based on what is their field of expertise or whatsoever, and basically collaboratively work on one of these maps. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, so we actually do have that. We have the real-time collaboration, so you can do it real-time, or you also have the option to just kind of go async. So like, I want to go into the episode today. I mean, not the episode, the diagram today, and you want to go into it tomorrow and make your fixes. So we have both options. So you could either do it at the same time or just separately.
That is super cool.
But I'll tell you more about that. Yeah, I'll tell you more about that later on. But yes, it has it, and I think it's one of our, I think, most loved features. So I'm glad you brought it up as something that you would like to use for for season 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean,
your team
one could even think it further. Of course, my background is entertainment industry, or like this example relates to entertainment industry. So obviously there could be numerous other really good reasons why to use it. But for example, in here, like a collaborative function would be interesting also, that various departments can add specific information, for example, to one of these bubbles. So let's say I share this with the camera department, and they will not do their part on the story, because it's not their responsibility, except for they see something that is a problem, so they could maybe highlight that. But I think interesting is that what if they will add information to these bubbles in regards to, okay, we want to shoot this on this camera and blah, 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 like technical information. Yeah. Or maybe someone who's handling all the availability for the actors, and that person can already like make a pre-schedule or something. But anyway, I mean, there are many tools, and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess you've covered a lot of the questions that I was going to ask you, which is always a good thing when you're interviewing someone and like wanting to know more about their use case or about their series. And I was going to ask you what advice you would give other teams or other filmmakers. But you've answered that, so we don't need to go right back into it. But if you do have something else that you would um, give them advice, maybe in terms of like the visualization or keeping organized, what would be your number one tip for other filmmakers aspiring to create either a short film, a regular film, or a series?
Yeah, for filmmakers, my advice is not so easy, because I think filmmakers, they really all have to walk their own way and find out what works for them. It's like we are all explorers, and we want to reach the top of the hill, and I don't want to tell them what tools and how they should do it, because they will find their own way. I can just say that for myself, this is a helpful tool. It doesn't limit me, and it doesn't dictate me what I have to do. And this is what I enjoy, and I could imagine that other filmmakers will also love and enjoy that, and probably will even use it to a much higher extent or on a higher level than me, because I'm more like a creative, chaotic person, but maybe another filmmaker is more like scientific or very calculated type of person, and I can imagine you do much more sophisticated stuff than what I'm doing.
I mean, it looks pretty sophisticated to me. I think you're not giving yourself enough credit. I think this is a big diagram that has been worked on. I just think that you've worked on it, you know, kind of slowly adding on to it as you go. It wasn't like you created this in one day. You just kind of, as you go again, and once again, move the shapes around like they're Post-its. So I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, Simon.
But actually, I created that very fast. So this whole overview.
I'm sure you did.
This whole overview, I did it like in, I think, 2 or 3 days, and not full time, you know. So
no.
I mean, of course, it's not possible to do it if you don't have written the story somewhere else.
Correct. But, you're just basically highlighting the smaller, more precise points of the story you've already got. Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely. Okay, well, if you don't have anything left to share, I'll close it out and then you can follow up on that. It's been really, really amazing to hear about Forces of Nature. We're all really excited to watch. And also really exciting to see how draw.io played a part in shaping this series that I'm sure is going to be epic. So for everyone watching, please don't forget to follow the Instagram. I'm going to leave the link tree for Forces of Nature, where you can have updates for streaming info and anything you need. And yeah, I think I'll let Simon say goodbye to you all and share any last words or thoughts. I said Simon, it's Simon. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for watching, and to all the people here and all the creatives. But by the way, for me, everyone has a lot of creative potential, no matter in what industry you work in. Embrace the chaos and don't be afraid of the tools, because I can handle it, you can handle it, and I hope you enjoyed what we were talking about today. So that's it from my side.